Thank you for tuning in to the Patricia Show. My name is Patricia. Please press like, subscribe, and share. And share this audio with someone who you really know needs it. I'm going to take some time to kind of tell you a little bit about my spiritual path because I'm fixing to get into some really heavy teachings with you. And you're going to want to know, well, who is this lady? And where does she come from? And why is she saying this stuff? And she's just saying this because she doesn't really believe in the Bible. And you're going to have a lot of questions. So I just want to give you a little bit background on myself, and it might be a two-parter. Okay, so when I was a little girl, so first of all, I was always clairvoyant and clairaudient. I was able, as a child, to look into people's life and just see, like what you call a reader, just see things in their life. It showed me the real them, though, not the person that they say they were. One thing I learned early on that energy doesn't lie. I remember one time this lady, I don't want to say who she was, but she came over. My family hugs a lot. They're like huggers. Everything had to be a hug. You can't come in the door and not hug everybody. You got to go around the room, hug all the aunts and uncles, the older people. And if you don't, it's like, well, who do you think you are? You know what I mean? So the hugging is, you know, cannot always be, it's not always sincere. It's because you do it because you're supposed to do it. So I remember one time I had went to hug a relative, and I knew I was a child, and I knew that she was jealous of me, but I didn't know why. And I knew that she didn't really love me. She was pretending. But so I said something, and when I said something, oh, that's not true. Oh, I love you so much, went through this whole thing. But I can feel her energy. And I remember standing there looking at her, and this voice inside of me saying to me, focus on her energy. Energy always reveals the truth. But her energy was saying that she really didn't like me. She was saying something different than what her mouth was saying. So as a child, I began to pay attention to people. When they would say something, was they saying things because they really meant it or just saying it to be saying it? And I found that a lot of people just say things to be saying it. It's not how they truly feel. So I learned early on that energy never lies. And so if I seen something around somebody, like if I knew somebody didn't like me, it's a waste of time to tell them why are you hugging me? You don't like me, or whatever the case might be, because they're going to lie and say they do and get all upset and do all that. So I never said anything else. If I would know that a person didn't like me or whatever, I wouldn't even open my mouth. I would pretend like whatever they were saying was right. But I knew I have this inside of me, the energy never lies. So I used to talk so because I was clairvoyant and clairaudient, I could see different spiritual energies around that maybe you couldn't see. So I knew as a child Gabriel was around me. I just knew that as a child. And he would come to me and just tell me things and teach me things. I actually remember when I was really small, he came to me and told me that my real father was not my father, or the one that they were saying my father was not my father. And he told me that the one that my sister's father, was actually, he had adopted me, but he wasn't my biological father. I never, ever told anybody that I had been given this information. And then over the years, I really had forgotten it. until one day I was 13, I think, and my cousin told me that my sisters and father really wasn't my father. He was not my biological father. He just adopted me. And I remember crying, like really losing it. But then I remember, wait a minute. I remember, Gabriel told me that when I was a little kid. I remembered that. But I never told my mother. I think I told one member of I think my cousin. I told my cousin because me and him was really close. And I told him that this spirit had told me that his name was Gabriel, and he had told me that when I was little, but I had really just forgot about it. So things like that would happen to me where I would know things in advance of maybe something happening. So as I got older, I started going to readers. And when I was going to readers, they kept saying I was anointed. I really didn't know what that was. Now, my mother had us we were Muslims, but were followers of the Elijah Muhammad like American Muslims. That's what it was. Elijah Muhammad and Farrakhan, because Farrakhan was in it, too. We were followers of them. As a child, I never believed what they were saying. When they would talk bad against white people, I would feel it in my stomach. Something would be in the pit of my stomach, and I knew what they were saying was untrue. So I didn't believe it. We were not taught about Jesus the way the regular Christians were taught about Jesus. So I really didn't understand the life of Jesus when I was a child. And I do remember asking God to please show me the truth about Jesus, teach me about Jesus, and reveal the truth to me because I always wanted to know the truth. And another thing, too, I remember saying this, I remember reading the Bible, because I read the Bible when I was young. My mother said when I was like 7, I would lay on the floor and read the Bible and try to interpret the Bible to them, and they just didn't know what I was talking about. And I was more wanting to interpret the Bible on Christmas than wasn't interested in opening Christmas gifts. She said she remember one Christmas I wasn't even interested. I wanted to interpret the Bible to them. So I was really, as a young child, I had read the Bible back and forth, and I understood it. That's the thing. I knew that what it was saying wasn't literally. Every time I would read, now this happened up until I was in my 30s. When I would sit down to read the Bible or any spiritual book, I would hear in my ear a voice that would say, yes, that's true. No, that is not true. If I would think a question like, what do you mean it's not true? Why isn't it true or something? And then it would just get silent, and then sometime it would come back and say, you'll learn that later in life, or you'll learn that later. So I went from the time I was little to the time I was like 30 something. I never could just read a book without just in silent, in other words, because this voice was always there. That's true. That's not true. They made that up. That never happened. You know what I mean? It was like that. Anything in the Bible or it's a spiritual book. Anything doing with spiritual. So when I was older, like I said, I had went and I had got we used to go to readers. So the readers would always tell me I was anointed. I didn't really know what that meant because Muslims just didn't use the type of word anointing. So I remember one year I was in I don't know how old I was, maybe in my 30s, maybe. Oh no, actually I was older than that. I might have been in my early 40s. Anyway, I had went to Jamaica. I used to go there every year to vacation. And my housekeeper was telling me that the other housekeepers on the property, it was a condominium hotel like, that they were all saying that I was anointed and that God had a work for me to do. Well, I didn't even know these ladies. You know what I mean? Had never talked to them. So I'm like, how would they even know that? I don't even know it. You know what I mean? So how could they? What are they talking about? And she said that one time they were talking, and one of the housekeepers said, "Just look at her. Look at her. You can look at her in her eyes and tell she's different. She's not like the other, the people who come there to vacation. She's anointed, and God has a work for her to do." I just was so baffled because I really didn't know, why they were saying that or what that meant. So I had met a guy over there who I really liked. It didn't work out. My housekeeper told me that she had went to say her prayer to ask God to please send Patricia somebody who was good to her and love her, things like that. She said she was so shocked because as she rose from the prayer, she heard a voice say to her, "Don't worry about Patricia. She's going to be okay. We're going to take care of her, so don't worry about her." I was like shocked, you know what I mean, that she heard this. So all throughout my life, I had constantly been hearing about this, me being anointed. Whatever reader I would go to, they would tell me I was anointed, or they would tell me about this light that was going to come through me, and this light was coming directly from God, and it was so powerful. And they would, explain to me what they saw, the what they saw, because it's like they saw this light coming through me. One man told me, he was a preacher. He told me that he was a preacher in I think it was a sanctified church, I think. And he took my hand one day. I went to service. He was just telling people to stand up, and he was giving them a message. And he told me that he seen me in an auditorium, and he seen me holding hands, but this light began to flow through me so powerful. He never had saw anything like it. And the whole auditorium was filled with this light that was coming from me. And it was like everybody was holding hands in the auditorium, and the light was coming from me, but everybody was being filled with the light from me. And he was saying he just never saw anything like that and didn't know what this was. He knew it was from God, and it was so powerful. And so then I started having a few people started telling me about this light coming through. And I think I was 20 when this guy first told me that about the light. But then as time went on, people was telling me about this light that was going to come through. So again, it was just, so I used to always have this feeling like I wanted to know, who was I? I knew I was much more than this personality, Patricia, but I just, wanted to know, who was I? So when I was younger, I remember reading the Bible, and it was King Solomon would always pray. He was a very wise king, and he would always pray for God's wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. So I remember at the age of 12, I think I was around 11 or 12, I began to say that same prayer for God to give me wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. And I continued to say that prayer all the time, every day, until I was, maybe 50 something years old. I continued to ask God for wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. So when I spoke obviously it really worked, because when I would speak to people, I didn't just speak to them, just give, like if you asked me a question, I didn't give you a question that was answered from the top of my head. It's like something would always take me to the light of God, and there the answer always was for me. I'm going to have to end this recording because my recordings is just 15 minutes long. This is part 1, and I'll make a part 2. Thank you for tuning in to The Patricia Show.